up here. Hold on. I'm sorry. I haven't heard from him. Finance, special called finance meeting of May 16th, 2023. We have, can I get an acceptance of the agenda? Do you have any discussion on the agenda?
No discussion on the agenda.
Can I get a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
And I second that. Also, we will not be looking at the minutes from last meeting. We'll do that next Tuesday. And I forgot to take the roll call. We are missing one alderman on the committee, and that's Alderman Sassy. And Alderman Bergdorf and Dixon are here. On our agenda, we have 2 ordinance and 1 resolution. And the first item is for reading of our ordinance 2023-11, an ordinance of the City of Hendersonville, Tennessee's adopting our annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year, beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. Can I get a motion to?
Oh, yes, ma'am. A motion to accept.
In a second. So I'm going to turn it over to Jesse to lead us in this discussion on this ordinance and our budget. But I'd like for the mayor's here right now. I'd like for him to talk a little bit about the process, about moving this forward to BOMA.
Okay. State law is very specific on one of my responsibilities, and that is that I propose an amendment. I propose a budget for the fiscal year. The city can spend no money outside of its budget. You notice that during the fiscal year, sometimes we have spending that's outside the budget. Always the language of those ordinances are that we are amending our budget. We can't just spend money. So it's my responsibility to propose a budget. It's also my responsibility to implement the budget that passes, which I think every year that has been here, except for one, has always been different than the one I proposed. I still have a legal obligation to implement the budget that's passed by the board, whether I agree with it or not. This year's budget, I would bet, probably involved 100 people. The point people on that were Jesse and Tamara. But having to work, obviously, with department heads, with supervisors, even with people outside city government that we have to go to get input on this budget. So I think that what I've proposed with Jesse and Tamara and those other people's help, I think what I've proposed is a good budget. It is not perfect. I don't think we've ever had a perfect budget. A perfect budget would have a lot more revenue involved and a lot less pain. But I think it's a good one. I am certainly open to the possibility of improvements. If the Finance Committee wants to recommend some improvements, you cannot amend this budget. What you can do is you can make a motion to suggest an amendment at the board level.
Right.
We don't allow, and it's not just the budget, but any ordinance or resolution that goes through a committee, the committees do not amend those items. The committee can make recommendations for the board to amend those items. So I welcome that. But also, even if individual members of the committee who want to make a motion to amend the budget when it gets to the board, they're welcome to do that. You don't have to do that here. And even people who are not on the Finance Committee, they can make motions when we get to the board level to amend the budget. That's fine. It is not a final budget until it passes second reading. Until that, all 13 of us have the opportunity to make a motion to amend it.
Right. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Jesse, can you go over a little bit about when we started the budget and the timeline and what committees it's gone through, just for transparency?
Absolutely. So we started the budget a couple of months ago. We've went through a couple revisions of the budget. It was submitted to every committee, so General Committee, Finance Committee, Public Safety, and Public Works Committee. We've held 3 budget workshops, which were open to the public. We got with department heads. I think in March we started the process with getting with department heads. And internally, we've probably seen about 10 or 12 different versions of the budget, so
Right.
it's definitely has had some progression. The basic kind of framework is we get input from department heads, we set some criteria, some guidelines for what we can and can't do. We go to multiple budget workshops, we go to multiple committee workshops and committee meetings, and then based on the input that we've received in the mayor's direction, we've come tonight with the culmination of those ideas. And of course, all those meetings are open to the public as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We can start our presentation on where we're at with our budget.
Yeah, so what I thought we'd do is everyone's familiar with the budget that went to all the committees. So I'm just going to go line by line from what has changed. Instead of having multiple versions with small changes, we've just tabulated all the changes, and so I'm just going to go line by line on what all those changes are, and then we can get into kind of the overall picture of the budget.
Okay.
So on the revenue side of things, one of the benefits of doing your budget later in the fiscal year is that you're able to get more accurate revenue projections. So our finance team took a look at revenues, and business tax was increased by $100,000. We still think that's somewhat conservative. We increased other revenue by $28,000 for 2 HPD grants that we're going to receive. The local option sales tax was increased by $200,000 based on us anticipating a 2.5% jump next year over this year's estimated collection. So our estimated collection is a little bit higher than we originally anticipated. We've adjusted contributions and donations in the general fund as the revenue related to special events will now go to the new hotel motel fund. So we used to collect all those special event revenues in general fund. We have a new hotel motel fund, and so the revenues will go to that hotel motel fund. We also moved $142,000 of expenses into that hotel motel fund. We added $200,000 for potential grants, both on the revenue and the expenditure side of the house. That way we don't have to come back to BOMA for these small grants that we're going to potentially receive. And we reduced the property tax revenue by a little over $3.5 million as we've developed a trash fund, and those revenues have shifted over to the trash or the disposal fund. For salaries and benefits, we've moved wages for BOMA members, city attorney, city judge, from admin services to general services. We've adjusted wages for city attorney and city judge based on the most recent expenditure reports we have. Updated police department salaries and benefits. We've done a small change with a correction that we found in the police department. We added $430,000 to salaries for the police department to do a 5% pay uptick for sergeants and below, and a 2.5% pay uptick for lieutenants. We reduced the part-time wages for codes. We reduced part-time wages for planning. We took there were 2 part-time employees. We went down to 1 because the clean team is now going to supplement what that part-time employee was doing.
That's great.
We added some on-call pay for public works and park staff. There was $115,000 for health insurance costs based on our most recent estimates that were added in. Updated salaries and benefits for public works and finance staff that spend a portion of their time on trash. So some of the calls that we receive are trash related. Some of the activity we do in the finance department is trash collection related, so those got moved to the trash fund. Updates to general services, we moved $250,000 for insurance claims from admin services to general services. We moved $233,000 for reappraisal expenses to general services. We added $15,000 for efficiency incentives to the general services. We've talked about many times adding incentives for efficiency, so we just put some money in the budget so we have the ability to do that. The ECC, which is our 911 call center, the cost to run that went up substantially, so it went from $1,293,000 to $1,472,000, so that had to get added in. And then we moved $55,000 for the municipal bins and roll-off from disposal to general services. So there has been traditionally some of these expenses that didn't really fit in any one department, and we kind of threw them in the department that was the closest to that. We're going to get away from that practice. We renamed that department general services, so these services that you can't really peg to one department,
Right.
we're going to just put them in general services, which makes the budget look, from a percentage basis on which departments are increasing and decreasing this year, makes it look a little bit different, but on a go forward, it'll be a lot cleaner. So reappraisal expenses, I think traditionally came from finance. That's not really a finance expense, so that might not be a great example, but items like that that weren't really related to a specific department are now going to be in general services. Updates to department budgets. We've combined IT and HR. It was broken out in the original budget just to give you guys more of a granular view of that. We moved $65,000 in IT budget from new projects to assets. That's for server replacement and network infrastructure upgrades. We moved $37,500 in admin services to new projects for professional services. That's for a website redesign. We added $90,000 for our general liability insurance, so that went up $90,000, which we had to account for. And then we added $7,000 to general services for the Chamber of Commerce membership. That previously was in community contributions, so we're just accounting for that membership now in admin services. Police department moved $84,500 in the police department budget from continuing projects to assets. That's $50,000 for a mobile command, $25,000 for LPR expansions, and then we did $9,500 for property maintenance abatement. We moved $10,000 out of HPD operations for continuing projects for completion of the range. We took one vehicle out of the police department budget entirely, and then we moved 3 police department vehicles from the police department operating budget to the drug fund.
Good.
So the drug fund will pick up 3 of the
Right.
vehicles. So originally we had said, hey, we're going to have 10 vehicles for police. We took that down to 6 in the police fund. We removed 1. We put 3 in the drug fund. And then the most recent budget amendment that we've done this year is going to add 5 new police vehicles too. So we can true up any type of police vehicles we need to at mid-year if we need to. For parks and special events, we added $13,000 to the parks budget for inmate crew expenses. That's really good news that we're going to get some of the inmate crews to work out there in the park, so we accounted for that. We moved maintenance for Mary's Magical Place from special projects to parks operations. We reduced special events, so Director Gilly found some room to move some of these special events, and the fireworks, which is Freedom Festival, it was $37,500 and is now $30,000. Pig Fest was reduced both the revenue and expenditure side by $8,000, and Hometown Jam reduced both the expenditure and the revenue by $4,200. Community contributions, we added community contributions for 3 additional organizations that submitted applications late. We updated community contributions to the amounts recommended by the Finance Committee, or the Nonprofit Committee. And then we moved $30,000 from Rock Castle, or for Rock Castle, from community contributions to the Hotel Motel Fund. For planning, we moved $240,000 from new and continuing projects to professional services. That's for the Westlake redesign, facade improvement program, wayfinding, an impact fee study, and the Stop 30 future plan. On the finance, in the finance department, we added an additional $4,000 for the audit contract. We have a new GASB requirement to do this year, so there's another $4,000 in the audit
New what?
contract.
I'm sorry. The-
GASB, Government
GASB.
Accountable Standings
Okay,
Board.
thank you.
So there's another application in our audit process that we're going to have to do. And our auditors have warned us that prices will go up in the future too. They've held our prices flat for a while. And so they have kind of come back and said, hey, we'll meet you in the middle of the road, but the next year prices are going to go up again. So We will be having increases for professional, technical, and finance. And then in the fire, we reduced the amount from fire for equipment replacement reserve by 170,000, so now it's 180,000, and that's where we talked about putting money aside for a future fire apparatus. Disposal, we created a new disposal services fund. We updated the cost based on fiscal year ~24. We've removed disposal services and tipping fees from the general fund. We've moved it to the disposal fund. We've added the $3.5 million in revenue from reduced property taxes to the disposal fund, plus added additional revenue for the increased fees to cover the cost. We've added the transfer to disposal from the general fund and the related transfer back to the general fund from the disposal fund. So for the first 4, 5, 6 months, we're going to have this trash fund. We have to pay the bills out of the trash fund. We have no money in the trash fund. So we'll have a payment from the general fund to the disposal fund. When we collect property taxes mid-year, we will take part of that money. We will pay back the general fund what we had to front the money.
I have a question about this. I don't know if I should hold it for the next ordinance, because we're going to approve that in the next ordinance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just hold the discussion for
Okay.
that then.
We'd also talked about doing a vehicle replacement fund. So after talking with the auditors, they're recommending that we just reserve within our fund balance of the general fund, that we just have a reservation, basically an assignment. We earmark some of the funds rather than doing a separate fund. So it will work the same way for us. We'll still show it in the budget, and then it's just kind of in a different financial reporting practice. So it won't be its own fund. We're going to just tag it as basically an assignment within our general
Okay.
fund balance. That's
So
so
will not
much is
need to be
for.
tagged then.
What was their reservation about not putting it in a fund?
Do you remember the specifics, Tamara? Do you want to? Would you mind getting up and talking to the microphone?
So there's actually not a state recommended fund for equipment replacement. And so with the way that the GASB accounting and the GAAP accounting requirements, they recommended that we do it as a reserve as opposed to a new fund, because it would end up being added into the general fund because of the way that the accounting requirements are for that type of
Okay.
item.
Okay, thank you, Tamara.
You're welcome.
And then the last item on this long list is we removed from continuing projects the traffic signal at Long Hollow and Drakes Creek. So that is off of the list. So that's
Okay, because we're going to get to that this fiscal year.
probably next fiscal
Oh,
year.
okay,
So we
okay.
pulled it off for this fiscal year. So
Okay,
there's a slew of changes. You know, at the end of the day, it's making the general fund operating budget look much better.
yeah.
So I will go over the highlights of that. You know, if you, sure.
I'm pulling up the email from Mayor Clary this morning. I didn't hear you mention this, and I don't remember it being discussed in any of our workshops that we had, but he's added a paid for services for the Golf Course Commission, Parks Board, and Board of Zoning and Appeals. What's the reasoning for that? What's the spirit of that? Why we've never done that before? And so it would be $100 a month per committee member for those here. And I don't remember us discussing it in the workshops. Do you?
No, I don't. I don't remember that.
I believe the reason why, and the mayor can clarify this if I'm not representing him correctly, but I think he felt as though some of the boards were being left out. So it was just to include them in pay like some of the other boards are already doing. I know he's made mention to me that it's quite a time commitment for some of these boards to meet, set their time aside, and contribute. So he felt that it was appropriate to offer some compensation for the
And
meetings.
what is what is the annual increase for this? Do you remember? Because I don't know how many people are on, like, the zoning appeals or.
I bet we can do that math and give you an answer in about 5 or 10
Okay,
minutes.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you,
fine,
thank you. And at this time, based on your list, if any committee members would like to ask questions from, and to catch you, Alderman Sassy up, Jesse just went through a very long list of changes that have gone on since the last time we've seen the budget.
Well, that's why I was late, so I could miss all that.
Well, I would actually like to know if there's a way we can get a copy of that, unless you've already
Yes.
sent it.
No, I'm wanting the same thing.
Yes, okay.
Well, it can, really quick, maybe it's on here already, but I noticed that there was also an increase in the alderman amounts, and I was actually going to recommend that we move that back to 67204, like we've been making, and not take that increase. You know, it's not gonna be much, it's only, did you guys already talk about that? It's only
No,
No,
$500
no,
a
it's
month,
been,
but-
it was, no, it's not. It was just listed. It's not an increase, right, Jesse?
It is.
Yeah.
Is
so,
it?
Listed
Yeah,
as an
so it was
employee.
Great.
it was a cost of living across the board that
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Yeah, we got the 6% just like everyone else did, and I'm like, my feeling is, you know,
right.
I don't wanna take that. I think we should, put that back at, cause we're not doing this to make money, we're here to serve.
and that's why I asked
Absolutely.
the question about the boards that the mayor's proposing to begin paying them $100 a month. I think it's $100 a month.
It is
isn't
It is $100.
And, you know, I think it would be something good to talk about at BOMA when this gets to BOMA. Let's talk about that. Because
Yeah.
we can't make an amendment to this tonight. We can make a proposed
Yeah,
amendment.
and that's
but
all
we
I'm
can
saying is
only
my
move it on.
recommendation, that we
Yeah,
take that off the
I
table.
appreciate you bringing
Yeah,
that up.
yeah.
I didn't know that. Thank you, Jesse.
So yeah, absolutely, a list can be provided, and I think after tonight, what we'll do is a list of the changes, plus a list of what the finance committee has made note of, and that can go out to the full BOMA.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And then, I'm sorry, you probably already talked about this, I
No,
apologize,
no.
I was late. For some reason, my head said 6 o'clock today, not sure why. So that's my fault. The intergovernmental, so year over year, it went down almost 2 million, and now we're increasing at 7 million. Can you explain what that's about, what the intergovernmental revenue?
What page are you on?
That would be page 3.
Okay. Yeah,
That's,
Tamara, on page 3, under general fund, there's intergovernmental, which is the third item
yeah.
for the budget. So generally, not generally, all the time when I'm speaking on the budget, I'm picking it up from the budget book. This is more of a financial report that's a little bit harder to digest and know where the information's coming from. So just for your reference, when I'm talking
Oh,
about
that's
the
right,
budget
Thrive.
book that we prepare.
The package,
Right.
yes. yeah.
So it's just a little bit easier to follow and it breaks it down.
So to answer that, those costs are actually the budgeted amounts for the grant funds from the federal and state grants related to the projects.
So are those funds that have already been awarded for the projects, or anticipated rewards?
No, they're already been awarded. Those are the federal and state awards. So because they are coming from either a federal or a state entity, they're another governmental agency, those revenues come in as an intergovernmental revenue.
Okay.
And a lot of times we'll see changes in those year after year because they're based on a reimbursement ratio. So it's not like we're going to get 5 million this year. When we do a project, we get reimbursed a percentage of that project. So if we get into an environmental issue and the project's delayed 6 months, then we'll receive the revenue potentially the next year. So it's a reimbursement ratio that depends on when the project is billed. So sometimes those timelines can shift as you try to anticipate, sometimes 16 months before a project begins.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What about other? We're going from 370 2 years ago to 883 this year to 3.1 million. What would that be?
The additional on other is interest income or investment earnings. We have about 650,000 that we're budgeting for interest,
Yes.
investment income in next fiscal
Yes.
year. And then there's the funds, revenues that traditionally come in related to the special events that will now be going into the hotel motel. So there's a little bit of a decrease in addition to that increase.
There's still about, so it's an
1.2
increase of, yeah, about 2 million, over $2 million on that other.
So the interest income would rate, if you will go from 883, add 650 to that, right? Approximately, that's 1.4. And then the hotel motel is about 360,000. So that's 1.8 or so. So we're still about $1.3 million unaccounted for. That, I mean, I'm sure it's accounted for. I just don't know where it is. I'm still on 3.
Of the ordinance,
Yeah,
Not the
the actual
package.
ordinance, not the
not the
Yeah,
package.
yeah,
budget.
The
yeah, the
ordinance is in a
ordinance.
roll-up summary, and I think it might be helpful to you for Jesse to go through the package and the summary of the package, and it might be, you know, answer
Provide
your
clarity.
questions.
Yeah.
So it's in the budget ordinance
in-
itself.
in the
It's
ordinance.
not in the, it's not in the packet. That's the budget book, and it rolls up, as Chair Dixon
Yeah,
said.
there you
it-
go. It's on the screen.
The ordinance rolls up into a just very line-by-line item with all the revenues and expenditures. It just doesn't give the detail that the budget book gives. So usually we go off the budget book because it gives more detail than this does. But so the item that Alderman Sassy is referring to is under revenues where it says other. It's going from 883,000 to 3.14 million. So Tamara, go ahead and look for that. When you have what that is, you can let us know.
I have an answer on
Yes.
the additional other board.
Yes.
Yeah.
The total increase was 22,730 to add the additional wages for the other board members.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So while she's looking for that, what that other is, feel free, we can move on to the
Okay,
next
yeah,
question. you
for
have.
sure. Another question, the $40 million that we're showing general fund at the end of the fiscal year, does that include the 20 million we invested?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So we have about 20 million in the bank right now, plus the 20 million investment.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What do you recommend we work from, this or roll on?
The package, I think, is what Jesse's just going to point us to several summaries. Right,
Okay.
Jesse?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And so to add and answer the question related to the difference on the other income or the other revenue, that actually includes the $2 million transfer from the trash fund back to the general fund.
yeah.
So we have to do, basically loan the new disposal fund $2 million.
Right.
And then we have to receive that revenue back when it gets repaid. There's actually an expense and a revenue on both sides. So that's where $2 million of that difference on the other comes into play as well.
So where would the expenditure be coming from? What line item? Would that be disposal services?
No, it's in general services department budget.
Okay. Okay, makes sense.
So
Thank
then
you.
we'll see, we will also see a transfer out of the disposal fund. So you'll see that 2 million transfer in and out of the disposal
Yeah.
fund as well. And basically, again, what that is we're gonna start this fund with $0 in it because we haven't collected property tax. We're gonna pick up trash and go through our operation until we get property tax. So it's just like a short-term loan from the general fund to the disposal fund.
And then last thing on this part, and this one's just a point of, because I, clarification for myself and for anyone else watching, I did notice on the new hotel motel fund that there was a debt service of $250,000, which was more than the actual special events expenditures. But I did look into that, and that's actually payment for the new hockey center. What do you call that? That,
Hockey rink, inline hockey.
yeah, inline hockey rink over there. And then how long is that for? That's 10 years, 15 years?
I think we have another 7 or 8 years on that debt service. So the reason that's in the hotel motel is our debt service is actually greater than the 250,000. But the portion of it that was for the inline hockey rink, since that inline hockey rink brings in tournaments and people come in from all over, I think multiple states will fly in to play tournaments there. Since it's tourism generating, tourism development, it gets charged to the hotel motel fund. So it's about 47%, I believe, of the debt service, or 44% of the total
Yeah,
debt service.
It's 44% of that debt service payment, and that debt service payment, the last payment will be in fiscal year 2033. So we still have 9 more years to go.
Okay. That's all I had on that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Jason, if you would pull up the previous summary that you had up with the general fund budget summary comparison. I'm just going to hit a few of the highlights, and then if you want me to elaborate on anything, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Page
See
16.
this page here.
Page
What page?
16.
Page 16.
All right, right there. All right, so let's take a look at where we are at for the operating budget, which is the very top. This is, you could also think of this as the recurring budget. This is what we need to keep our lights on. This is our salaries, our benefits, everything we need to run the city. The revenues are a little over 57 million, expenditures over 56 million, so leaving us with a surplus of $765,000. Much better position than we were in when this budget went to the committees. We were less than, I believe, $20,000 in a surplus, so much better position. The non-operating budget, which is our capital, our special projects, one-time projects that don't have a revenue component necessarily with them. Maybe there's a grant, but it's a 50% grant or 75% grant. We have revenues of over 12 million, expenditures of almost 25 million. That puts us in the red of 12.5 million, but we budgeted last year for a lot of these projects. They were already in the fiscal year 23 budget, so we're just carrying them forward. The deficit on that's going to be about 2.4 million. So if you look at what our operating surplus is, and then you think about the new projects that we're taking on for this year, we would end up in a surplus position. But these are projects that we had budgeted for in previous years that are just carrying forward to this year. So it kind of rolls up in the bottom where it says operating and non-operating to put us in a deficit of 1.6 million. So we'll use some of the fund balance, the 1.6 million, to balance. As you know, we got ARPA funds last year, so our fund balance has increased. So we'll be using some of that fund balance that we were planning to use in this current fiscal year, but we're not doing those projects at the rate that we anticipated them, so they'll roll forward to next year. So overall, it's much better than what we first presented to the board, and if everything goes 100%, we'll be using 1.6 million of fund balance. If you'd go ahead and roll to the next page, Jason. This is just to give BOMA a better picture of what we have in our fund balance. So we have these discussions a lot of fund balance and these reservations, and we've never included it in the budget book. But this helps just to clarify what these dollars are. If you look at the very top where it says unassigned fund balance, this is the money that it doesn't really have an earmark for it, right? So it's just kind of cash that it's not, we don't have a PO issued for it. It's not for the fire hall. This is just money that's available to spend. So we're going to begin the year with over 20 million. We'll use 1.6 throughout the year, so we'll have at the end of the fiscal year 24, 18.8 million. And we're required by the comptroller or recommended to have a minimum unassigned fund balance of $9.4 million. So if you look at the table below that, this just gives a breakdown. When we look at that total fund balance, what's it made of? So we're showing $28 million of total fund balance. So this breaks down each category. It's kind of reads more like a financial statement would. But you will see the equipment replacement for $180,000 that's in here. That's that reservation that we're talking about for the fire apparatus. Instead of doing a whole new fund, we're just earmarking it right here as equipment replacement. There are 3 reserves that are marked there: a rainy day reserve, which we've called the prudent reserve, an infrastructure reserve, and a public safety reserve. We haven't formally adopted a public safety reserve, but I think I would be looking at BOMA to consider these 3 reserves.
Okay.
And basically what it does is we took our unassigned fund balance that's required by the comptroller of 9.4 million, and we took what was left over, so that 18.8, we split it 3 ways between the rainy day reserve, infrastructure reserve, and public safety reserve. So this puts us in a much better position to weather some storms, to have some built up for projects. So you will continue to see these in your budgets, and when we do mid-year adjustments, we'll also bring a fund balance summary. It just gives kind of more information to what's behind that fund balance when we talk about fund balance. The unassigned fund balance is just a portion of fund balance. We have portions that are committed. So like on committed, probably part of that is for the contract we have with the fire hall, that 5.1 million. So we have more money than just our unassigned, but a lot of it is earmarked. Yeah, you can go ahead and go to operating revenues. Like I said, we've made some small changes to operating revenues, which I already went over. That's a $100,000 increase to the business tax, about $200,000 to the local sales tax. What we've also done is we've broken out non-operating revenues and operating revenues just to give a more clearer picture of which revenues are going to be reoccurring year over year and which, the non-operating revenues, which are just going to be one time. And then we lump those together for total revenue. So again, it just gives a little more clear picture to BOMA of what's going on. If you'd go to the next slide, please, Jason. This is just the operating budgets for each department, so line item by line item. The percentages are going to be a little bit off here. As you can see, the disposal is negative 100%. It's the first time we're doing this this trash fund, so all the expenses got pulled out of disposal fund. And then general services has a huge increase because we've taken components of other departments' budget and pushed them into general services just where it makes more sense. But overall, you can see an increase of 4.28% on the budget. From here, I'm not going to go line by line through the department budgets. I figured we could just, you know what, are the slides are next, the pie graphs? Okay, we've talked about this. This is kind of a good picture of the operating budget by type. So the majority of our operating budget is salaries and benefits, about 2/3. Operations is 26%. So, you know, salaries, COLAs, things of that nature have a pretty big impact since it makes up such a large portion of what we do. If you'd go to the next slide, please, Jason. You can see where most of that comes from is public safety. So between police and fire, you know, we have almost 75% of our salaries and benefits budget. I think the next biggest department on there is parks at not even 6%. So you can really see that public safety is a huge priority for the city in terms of salaries and benefits. I think from here, we'll just go to the trash fund because that's new. Everything else, we've kind of went over the changes on it. So let's go to the trash. Oh, let's go to the hotel motel fund, actually.
Okay.
That is going to be,
What page is that?
Really quick, Jesse, on the Hendersonville Area Chamber of Commerce,
yes.
page 22, I actually just saw that they did request 15 this year as well, but it's going to the IDB. So they have a separate fund, or will that be added in here as well? Or, yeah, go ahead.
So we the nonprofit committee selected to participate in the chamber's top membership. So that $7,000 for a membership is getting budgeted out of general services, and the contribution is no longer there since the city's going to be a member. So that $15,000 was pulled out for the chamber as a contribution and added in general services as a $7,000 membership.
Right. We actually get more benefit for City Hall that way and
Yeah.
As a member.
as a member. And
Yeah.
so we had that idea. I thought it was a really good idea.
So is what's going to IDB this week, is that separate from this, or was that them attempting to get those funds in a different route, or do you have any idea?
I don't know that the nonprofits are dealing with the IDB specifically. I don't know if they submitted an application through the nonprofit, but I can follow up. I don't know if they put one in, but I can follow up with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just received the information today, so wanted to ask about that.
73, are we on page 73?
Yeah, so page 73, this is new for us this year. So this is the hotel motel tax fund. So it's commonly referred to as TOT, transient occupancy tax, or bed tax, lodging tax. So when you stay at a hotel or motel here, there's a 2.75% fee that gets added onto your stay. We are now going to collect the revenue in this fund, so we see how much revenue is coming in, and then we are going to have tourism-related activities that get paid out of this fund. So we also have a fund balance that's in this fund as well, which has kind of been tough to extract in past years. So this just makes it a little more clear, gives a little more transparency to these hotel motel funds. You can see there is debt payoff on page 73 under expenditures at $250,000 that we've talked about. That's for the inline hockey rinks. That's because we bring tournaments in with that rink. And then below that is a list of all the expenditures that we're going to have for these special events, which are tourism related. If you go to the next page, please, Jason, there's a list of everything together. And if you'd go to the next page, here is another sheet that we've added to give some context to some of these events. So, these events in total are going to cost $152,000, but there is also a revenue component. So the net cost to the city is not $152,000; it's estimated at $107,000. So this is just to provide some more context that a lot of these events do bring revenue in. I don't know that everyone expects all of these to bring in 100% revenue, but there's definitely a revenue component to many of these events. So this is just some additional information to give BOMA and the general public some context to these events. All right, if you'd go to the next slide, please, Jason. This is can you scroll down a little bit on that?
Solid waste.
I think it went back to page 28.
76. So we
Are we on 76?
So 76, yeah. There we go, thank you. All right. So you see the beginning balance. This is the solid waste and collection and disposal fund. The beginning balance is zero. That's because we don't have any dollars in this fund currently. But we anticipate at the end of the year to have an ending balance of $114,000. That's just a little bit of money in there for if collections go a little bit higher, if new houses come on board, if we have to replace cans. Some homes may not pay their property tax on time, so we might have to cover some of these temporarily. But this is a completely new fund to account for solid waste and disposal. So what the mayor asked us to do is to revert back to the rate that property tax was before property tax and trash were combined. And that rate was 0.75. And right now, I think our property tax rate is 0.91, so we revert back to 0.75. And that would lower the tax rate for everyone throughout the city. The way it works right now is that the commercial businesses subsidize residential trash services because their property tax rate went up the same as residential, but they don't get trash service. So this kind of stops that subsidy from the commercial sector on the private sector. So we we revised the property tax calculation for the general fund to be at a lower rate, right? So instead of 0.91, it'd be 0.75. So that's why in the general fund, we're going to collect less revenue because we're going to charge less property tax. But we also, when we send the property tax notice out just for residential properties, because we don't provide trash service to commercial properties, we will have a fee on there for trash collection. That fee is proposed at $251. We have a worksheet that I provided tonight and that I will share with the rest of BOMA that calculates that $251. I think this is, so I will kind of go over that. That's for landfill monitoring. That's at $10,000 a year. Residential brush disposal, grinding, leaf bag pickup, estimated at $285,000 for the year. The residential disposal service, so that's our contract with Waste Pro at $3 million. Tipping fee, so that's the what we pay for the weight of our trash when we go to the transfer station. That's at $1.5 million. Then staff time, fielding calls, cutting checks, things of that nature. About $42,000, and then a 2.5% fund balance of $120,000. So we take that total cost; it's approximately $5 million. We divide it by 19,695 homes, and it comes up to, I think it's $250.78. So we rounded to $251, and that's a per house fee that would go on for trash collection for residential service only. So this fund in here would account for all of that activity, both the expenditure and the revenue. And then these sheets, so if you go to the next page, page 77,
I'm sorry, that 251 is an annual cost to the resident, correct?
yes, it is.
Thank you.
The 251. So it would go out one time a year. It would not be a monthly or quarterly billing as is proposed now. It would go out just like your stormwater fee is on your property tax notice for $72. You would see a lower property tax rate, and then you would also see the standalone fee for trash and disposal collection of $251. So a completely new fund. It changes the way the general fund operates. It changes the way the general fund collects revenue and has expenditures. And then obviously it creates an entirely new fund. So we have been working diligently to get this done in short notice, but we think we're in pretty good shape to roll this out. We have circled up with the comptroller, the local government office, the audit office, TDEC, the assessor, and we are currently running tests with the people who print our property tax notices to make sure this can all flow on and go off without a hitch. So we're hoping that everything can work out just fine. We're confident that it can, but this is a pretty big shift for the city. That's in the mayor's budget. So that kind of wraps up the major changes that we have in the budget.
Can I, while we're on this same subject, do we have a plan for communication to the citizens about what we're doing here? Is there a communication plan?
Yeah, I think when we have, direction from BOMA on the fact that we'd want to implement something like this, we would have to have a push. Maybe it would be a mailer ahead of time, social media, but our public information officer would absolutely have to get some media out on what we're doing this year.
I think that's very important, to be very transparent about what we're doing. This in itself is transparency. This is why we're doing this, but I think that we owe it to have a really good, solid communication plan.
Yeah, I agree, and we've informed our PIO of the possibility, so we're kind of on standby to see what BOMA determines, and then we'll launch a media campaign from there.
Okay. So you're finished with what you want to share with us with the changes?
Yeah, I am, and I think if you'd like me to, I can include this disposal rate calculation in the staff report.
That'd be great.
So that it can be a, kind of a public record, be on the
Yes.
staff
Yes.
report. If we have to fine tune something, we can fine tune it between now and then. We've gone over these numbers several times, but I can include it as an exhibit on the staff report.
Great.
Thank you.
I would like to ask our members, our committee members, if they have anything else they'd like to ask. And if if you don't, I'm going to let some of the aldermen who are here visiting tonight ask questions.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
You have a
No,
question?
Go ahead.
All right. So on the agenda tonight, we have a couple items which do impact the budget. Now, do those two items, are they taken into account with this budget
Yes,
already?
yes.
Okay, so we're voting, or we're not voting, but we're analyzing a budget with details before we've analyzed the details of things that could affect the budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like your changes, your list of changes, I recognize those that were in here, but once we get that from you, that'd be helpful for us to go back and review your booklet here. So
Yeah.
we could address each item in BOMA.
Right.
If I'd been on time, I was going to recommend that we did this last instead of first, so we could review those changes first.
That was probably a very good thought, yeah.
Yeah.
But when we get to these last two ordinances, we can run through them quickly because
Yeah.
we've discussed them.
Okay. Yeah.
So do you have anything?
Nothing
else?
right now, no.
I know Mr. Waters, Alderman Waters had a question earlier. I'm sorry being so late to get back to you. Okay. Does Alderman Peterson? Oh. Absolutely.
Because it's online. It's online.
I can repeat the question
Yeah, go
up here
ahead.
if you'd like.
That's good.
Go ahead and ask the question. I'll repeat it.
Yeah.
We don't have one. Thank you.
Testing. I said a while ago, thank you, Jesse, for a great job. It's really education to me. First of all, let me go back to comptroller's request about our general fund. What do they request? Can you?
So the comptroller basically wants cities to have some working cash, right? So your revenues are going to wax and wane over the year. So like with property tax, we collect them really heavy in January. So the comptroller recommends you have some working cash. What they set up is a formula that's 16.67%, which is basically 2 months of your operating budget.
16?
16.67%. So it equates to roughly 2 months of your operating budget.
Yeah.
So what we do every year is we look at what our operating budget is, and then we say, okay, what is 16.67% of that? And then that's how we came up with these reserve amounts as well, because we figured that amount up, and whatever was left in our unassigned, we split between those three reserves.
In the past years, we've been way below that, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What are we today? Are we here now?
Yeah, so we've met that comptroller's recommendation, and then we have over 3 million in three reserves.
That's what I wanted to hear you say, yeah.
Good shape.
Plus 3 million. Great.
Yeah, so
great.
plus 9 million. There's 3 million in each reserve, three reserves, so there's comptroller's recommendation plus 9 million.
Fantastic. Great job. Let me go back to this pay raise that the mayor put out here, and I think Alderman Sasser mentioned it. Do y'all have a copy of this?
I don't know what your hand
Of the
showing.
letter, of the letter?
It's the email.
Oh, the email, yeah, I have
Yes,
it
yeah.
up
The
on my
email.
phone right now.
It
Yeah.
says currently 3 boards get paid for service. BOMA, Planning, Stormwater Appeals Board. That's the 3. In his proposal, he's asking to add the Golf Course Commission, the Park Board, and the BZA, okay?
Right.
I have a problem with that. As far as the raise, how much is, now, I haven't calculated it, is it,
We
For
just had
BOMA.
Tamara do that.
Pardon?
and We just had Tamara do that about an hour ago or so, and it's going to be 22.7, 200, $22,730 increase.
Total just for those three?
Just for the ones proposed to add.
How much
and-
again?
22, almost 23,000.
That's what I thought you said.
And so I had proposed, I had thrown out there that I think we need to discuss it at BOMA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to discuss it here.
Go right
Because I
ahead.
want to get your input on it since you're the finance committee. I think it's terrible. I really do. Now, BOMA, I can understand, and it's not a big deal as far as getting paid. I mean, these 12 years have been great to me. I love it. But we went out and asked for this, remember? We campaigned for this. You did, and you did. All of us did. Didn't expect to get paid for going out and asking you to help me. I just don't, maybe I'm on the wrong side of the track. I don't know. But to pay me for something that I asked for, I didn't do this for the money. Good God, nobody, I don't think any of you did ask for the money. But I just want to let it be known that I oppose this completely, okay?
Great.
Well, you are the highest paid BOMA member.
Pardon me?
You are the highest paid BOMA member among the 12.
Well, 12 years.
But so am I, and so
I
is she,
deserve
and so
that. Okay. Let me be sure I understand, Jess. You said, maybe the mayor said about amending the budget at first reading. Did he say we had to amend it? We couldn't vote on the budget, we had to amend it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just now understand what you're talking about. Yet, we cannot vote to amend it tonight. We can.
No, I said at the first reading.
Oh,
Did he say we can't vote on that budget, but we can amend that budget? Am I right?
we are going to vote on the budget twice. We'll have a first reading and a second reading, and you can amend at either time.
That's the only way we can change it, is by amending it, right?
That's correct,
Am I right? Okay.
yes.
Either first or second? Correct. Okay. All right. Just want to be sure I got my ducks in a row. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else, any of the other aldermen here would like to ask any questions?
Thank you, committee. I'm Lee Peterson, Alderman from Ward 2. And
Welcome, Lee.
thank you all for working on this budget. I do have questions concerning rolling back the property tax rate, which is exciting news to me. And it should be to this board, BOMA as well, because we've had two recent tax rate hikes in the past probably decade. So it's unheard of to have an opportunity to roll taxes back. So, and tax rate specifically. And, but my question is, I know we're going to make the trash service fee separate, and I think we're going to bill that at $251 per
Right,
household.
that's correct.
What's the current rate right now?
For
We-
tax rate?
No, the current trash
Oh.
fee.
We don't collect a trash fee right now, so it's not added on the property tax bill
Okay.
at all. So so the property tax notice is absent a trash fee. This would be a new line item, so you'd have a reduction in property tax, and you would have an addition of a trash fee. And that's, number one, I think you add some transparency with what the trash fee is. And number two, that trash fee would only get charged to residential. So your commercial projects wouldn't have a trash fee on them.
I
Okay,
think he's kind of including this, for this fiscal year, we paid 2.85 million in trash, and then you divide that by the 20,000 residents, you get a,
Yeah, but
Good number there,
we also did, grinding, leaf bag pickup. We did the tipping fee. So there's, besides just our contract for the waste collection, there's other components of what it costs us to do trash collection. That is the main component. It's about $3 million. That increases under our current contract at 2.5% a year. We drive that waste down to Nashville to the transfer station, and we pay tipping fees for the weight of that. So that's not included in the contract for collection. We pay just based on weight, and we have a contract with Republic Services for that. So we get a fee for the weight when we go to the dump, and we get a fee to collect at your house to drive down there as well. We've seen rate increases, I think, of over 30% in the last 2 years for the tipping fees. I think we went up in about 24 or 26% last year on the tipping fees, and this year at Social Security CPI at 8.7% increase. And we will likely see, when we go out to bid trash services next year, for the collection portion, a increase for collection of residential.
When is that contract?
It's up June 30
Process.
of next year.
Next year.
So it was
That
a
was my-
5-year contract with Waste
That was
Pro.
my next question. Waste Pro's contract is up in 1 year. And are we sending that out to bid again? What do we anticipate that contract will come in at?
Yeah,
An
so
increase 30%? Is that being, I know, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm hoping that's a conservative effort. But my point is, we reduce the property tax rate, and then we include a trash tax, and then when our contract's up, we have a new contract, and it comes in higher than expected. Have we really given the residents a tax break? I know this is hypothetical. I just don't want this to come back and look bad on the board. It's like we're playing a shell game or something, and I don't like doing that with tax dollars.
I
Well,
think
we're
we're
not really
cleaning
getting a
up a
tax
shell
break
game.
anyways,
That's
right?
how I look at it. We're being more transparent. And when those disposal fees go up, then the $251 goes up, and it's very clear. It doesn't look like we're increasing property taxes. And also, I think it's an overall a great thing for us to take our rate back to 1.75, because for economic development, it's always good to have a lower tax rate to bring business here.
It certainly is for the residents' benefit. I didn't know if we needed to just table this until next June, next year's budget, once we get the contract signed. Just food for thought. But again, thank you all very much.
Thank you
And technically, Lee, it's going to be pretty much a wash anyways.
for now.
Yeah, because we'll be taking it out of one place and putting it back in somewhere else.
Right.
And actually, homes that are around $600,000, they'll actually see a slight increase. And homes that are more than $600,000 will see a slight decrease. But it's like
It's
dollars
tiny.
or pennies.
Yeah.
It's very little.
Anyone else like to speak? Jesse, is there anything else we need to know before we take a vote on this ordinance?
I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty much laid out line by line
Okay.
in the budget book.
It's a very good job. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
you.
You and Tamara,
Thank
great
you for the
job.
work you've
Yeah.
done on
And
this
all the
your team.
directors as well.
Yep.
I would like to make a proposal that we pass this to BOMA, and we have
I
those,
say- Go ahead.
and we have those hard discussions at BOMA, so we're having them together. And I certainly am, like Mr. Waters, concerned about increasing the number of committees that we're paying.
So my question is, because it's my first budget cycle, so by us passing the BOMA, are we, even if with recommendations, are we able to provide a list of, here's the recommended changes? Or how's this work
Yeah,
exactly?
Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are specific items, I think one of them that we've already discussed is having this trash disposal service rate included in the staff report. But if there are certain items that you want kind of highlighted, we can pass it with a recommendation and note any type of adjustments that were noted by the Finance Committee.
Right.
Okay. Well, then I would like to specifically recommend that the BOMA salary be reduced back to the original amount and add that on there.
Just pull it out of the amendment.
Yeah,
So I will note on there that there's been a discussion about removing the COLA. So the COLA does not apply to BOMA.
correct.
Yeah, perfect.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to recommend?
One other thing, so on page 72,
Okay,
and this is the stormwater. I could be wrong on this, but I thought for the stop 30, did that get voted down to not do in this next fiscal
we
year?
discussed that. We're not, it will be probably the next fiscal year when it's, right. Isn't that right? Isn't that what you said, Jesse?
Yeah, so we will still do some work, whether we get to all of it or not. But that project is a stormwater project, so that's why it's budgeted out of this fund. We're going through right-of-way acquisition over there. It's very tough to say exactly when right-of-way acquisition will kind of be finalized. I think there is a cemetery that was in part of the land over there that we're kind of working at. Our grave site, we're kind of working through right-of-way acquisition over there. So exact timing is going to be difficult to determine for right-of-way, but that project is planned to go forward.
And so that is the actual stoplight right there, that work there, is that correct? But the actual widening is not being done, is that my understanding?
So that is for bringing the intersection up out of the floodway. So we're going to have to make the bridge taller. We're going to bring the roadway up. We're going to add turn lanes and do a stoplight over there, correct? That is not for the widening of stop 30.
Okay,
It will widen a portion, that approach. When you're heading east on stop 30, the approach to Drake's Creek will have an additional turn lane, but it will just be for the couple 100 feet. It's not going to do all of stop 30.
okay, that's why I was confused, because it actually says widening in the title there. But I do remember there used to be 2 line items, and now, at least in stormwater, I'm seeing 1, and I did not see another line item, so that must have been removed, so, okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Alderman Bergdorf?
I don't have anything else.
I want to broaden the one request that we have pushing this forward, to include, to not add payment to the other committees that are being proposed.
Yes.
Okay, so I will have a BOMA salary reduced by COLA and the 3 committees
Yes,
basically revert back to the way payment was the prior year.
correct. Thank you. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve or move this on to BOMA
So
with that
moved.
one comment?
So moved.
So, all in
Moving on.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that passed unanimously. Thank you so much. The next ordinance we have is 2023-12, an ordinance imposing fee in the amount of $251 for the purposes of funding the universal system of domestic garbage collection and disposal, and authorizing its billing on the city's property tax notices, which we've discussed this.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Anything else? We have a copy of that in here, right?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on the ordinance as it's written? Or the report that's been prepared? I think we've talked about it enough.
Yeah, we have talked about it. but,
And I have made a note to add the tax rate calculation
Great.
as an
Yes,
attachment on
please.
the staff report.
Super. So can I get a motion to approve?
Yes.
I thought
Go
we
ahead.
already did that.
No,
okay,
we
No,
did.
this is the second
Second.
ordinance.
Yes.
Oh, the second
Yeah,
ordinance?
yes,
Well, yeah,
This-
so it's, yes, second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so that passed unanimously. The last agenda item we have is, or ordinance and resolution, is a resolution 2023-20, a resolution to approve the job classification and pay schedule. And that is in our, under tab number 3, right? But we don't have much there, but that's all included in our budget.
This is the handout that I provided.
Oh, okay.
Did you get this handout?
I did not.
Okay, here it
Yeah.
is. Jason, if you would bring one more up here, please.
Thank you.
So this, in the past, what we've done is we've approved the budget, and then we've taken a resolution either during the time or after the time and said, hey, these are all the jobs that we approve. Instead of doing it after, it probably makes some sense to do it before, or even include this as part of the budget ordinance. And not only to include the job codes, but the salaries that are related to those job codes, just to provide additional transparency, and would allow BOMA member to go to any job position to see, or any resident to see exactly what it starts at, what it finishes at. And we just put a pay study out that had a list of everyone's pay, but we've never, to my knowledge, provided these in the past, and it should, I think, just be included in the budget.
I
So-
appreciate the
Yeah.
transparency.
Jesse, is there a comparison to what it was before?
No.
Anywhere on here?
So what these tables incorporate is what the mayor had asked us to do for the budget, which is a 6% COLA for all employees, plus a one-time 5% uptick for the police department for sergeants and down, and 2.5% for lieutenants. So all of those rates are included in these tables. So this matches the budgeted figure in the fiscal year 24 budget. So what can happen is if the ordinance is passed, we can take this sheet directly to payroll, and then they can implement these changes. It's exactly what BOMA's seen, it's what the public's seen, and then we put it into our payroll system. So it just keeps everyone on exactly the same page. I think in the past, we've said we'll do a COLA, and we never really had a pay table that was associated with it, so we kept changing pay tables on our end, on the back end, but we never had a sheet that we provided that showed what the pay is.
Great.
So this would probably be a practice we'd want to do year over year.
I
This
And,
is something we can discuss in detail at BOMA, correct?
yeah, and if you want, I can check with the city attorney to see if this would be appropriate to include in the budget ordinance itself, so it's all one document.
Okay.
And if you would,
So would we need a vote on it tonight, since we just,
you can still vote on it, and I think if you want to direct me to see if the city attorney can add this to the budget ordinance, then we can
yes, let's
consider
do
doing that as
Let's
well.
do that.
Yeah.
That would be
Wait,
great.
so we're proposing this be added to the budget?
To the budget ordinance. So
I
we
mean,
have a budget
we-
package that we've reviewed, and before that, we have the, in
This-
front of that, we have a budget ordinance that we have to,
There is so much in the budget, and then there's so much here. I would rather keep them separate. Obviously, we'd have to review this first and vote on this first. But I don't see any I understand what you're saying, that have them together because they are tied together. But I feel like these need to be individual discussions.
okay.
By BOMA
Do
personally.
you have something to discuss, because we're about to vote on this pay scale?
Right, no, my only thing is, and if I'm recalling it correctly, based on the pay study that we got, so the police were severely undervalued by about 10%. Correct me if my numbers are wrong, but I'm usually pretty good with numbers, so I don't think so.
I
But
think it was 18%, I'm thinking.
I think it was negative 10.7.
2.4.
I think
is my
we just called it, basically we rounded to negative 11.
You're right.
But
So hearing that it sounded like what you said, we were increasing the pay scale for some positions in the police, is that right?
sergeants and down 5%, lieutenants 2.5%, and nothing above a lieutenant.
Okay. That is great. I'm really glad to hear that.
Right.
And then you said the rest of the classifications we're just getting this, we weren't changing anything, but they were getting the COLA. Is that right?
That's what the mayor's proposed, so everyone across the board gets 6%, and then PD gets a one-time pay market adjustment of 5% for sergeants and below, and 2.5% for lieutenants.
Okay. For me, that seems like a very doable solution.
Yes.
Considering we're proposing a higher COLA than just about any other municipality that we've spoken to. So right there and then, they're going to, I know inflation has been significant, but this is what we can do. I mean,
Right.
we're doing everything in our power to take care of our most valuable resource.
Right.
And that's our people. So I am in support of that, and whenever you guys are ready, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Bergdorf, do you have anything?
Do we still want to attach this to the budget, or did we decide we weren't going to do that because they are tied together? Or did you decide you wanted to discuss it individually when it comes to budget? It's coming to budget, correct?
It is, but
one way or the other?
I think what we're asking is, Jesse Eckenroth is going to approach our city attorney to see if we
To see if we
can do
attach
it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we'd like to vote on it as is tonight.
Very well.
Just as is.
Yes.
Okay,
All right,
that's
thank
fine.
So-
As its own separate or a resolution or
Right.
ordinance.
And then maybe by the time it gets to Boma, he can come up.
Resolution, yeah.
Okay, all right, good
Then,
deal.
yeah, that's fine.
So can I get a motion to take a vote?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that passed unanimously. Moving on to other agenda items, vehicle fund and hotel motel fund. Do you have a verbal update for us?
I do. So we've kind of discussed this already, but the vehicle fund, we've talked about doing it after talking with our auditors. We still want to account for it. It's simply not creating a fund, but a designation within our fund balance. So we'll still show it as a department expenditure, and then we will, on the balance sheet, we'll have a reservation for it that says equipment replacement. So it'll work the same way. It just won't be its own separate fund, but it'll still be earmarked.
Great. Thank you.
For the hotel motel fund, and we've spoken in depth about that, this provides greater transparency. It allows us to see the revenues that are coming in, the expenditures that are going out, and maybe more importantly, the fund balance, so the amount of available cash we have to spend. So there may be some projects. We just did the lights at Memorial Park. They were about $160,000 with some of the fund balance from hotel motel fund, and that will allow us to have tournaments, lacrosse tournaments at night over there. So
Yeah.
it'll be tourism generating. So I think overall it's just increasing transparency, and it's a good mechanism for the budget in the city to be efficient going forward.
Great. Any discussion? Moving on to insurance costs.
All right, well, there's two different types of insurance I want to talk about. One is our general liability insurance. That went up about $100,000. We plugged that into the budget. Insurance costs just continue to go up and up. The other is health insurance costs. Jason, do you have that handout? I wanted to share this. The city hasn't really had so much of an established framework of
Thank you, Jason.
what the employee and the employer pays for health premiums. A couple of years ago, we made a switch with our healthcare provider because the cost just got too high. We had been just holding the dollar amount at a flat rate for the employee, and then it got to a point where the pressure built up and we just couldn't afford to continue at that rate. So what I think we would like to do is, instead of every year, HR is kind of in the pickle of, well, do we choose a better provider and charge a little higher rate for the employee, or do we keep with the provider that we maybe don't like so much and keep the cost low? It's just to go to a model that's percentage-based. So instead of a flat dollar, we get COLAs every year. They're percentage-based, and to move to a model that's more percentage-based. Right now, we have percentages that range as high as 94 and as low as 37% on what the employer contributes. So it's kind of, there's a very high and a very low. If we look at what the city does for an employee only, on average, we cover about 85% of their costs. An employee plus one, so an employee plus a spouse, we cover about 59%. And then for a family, we cover about 63.7%. So eventually, we'd like to move to a model where it goes 85%, 65%, or this is a proposal. We could go to 85%, 65%, 65%, and keep the modeling much more consistent between the plans rather than a range of anywhere from 37% to 94%, which is what we currently have.
Right.
So if you look at this sheet, basically the top is fiscal year 23 percentages, and the average cost is on the right-hand column. The blue in the middle is what we have in the preliminary budget, or in the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 24. And then fiscal year 25 is where we think we could land and just roll forward with that amount year over year. So if you look at, like, I'm going to take the low and the high. Right now on fiscal year 23, if you go to employee only on standard, the city covers 94%. On the 25 modeling, that would go to 90%. But if you look at the top tier insurance where there's an employee plus one, the city only covers 37%. But under the fiscal year 25 modeling, that would go to 60%. And the family would go from 48 to 60. So there's some, we're kind of drawing more to the middle rather than having extreme highs and extreme lows.
Right, right.
So it just kind of, it helps if we are consistent on a percentage basis. That way we know every year what is the employee and employer's percentage. We can budget a little more conservatively. The employee will take some of the costs on. The bulk of all the costs will be taken by the employer based on this modeling.
Right.
But it just gives us a little more consistent percentages across the board. You can see in fiscal year 25 overall, on the standard plan, it is a little bit lower than the current fiscal year 23. But we also, in this budget, have an HSA, which is a health savings account, where we would contribute, the mayor's proposed to contribute $100 a month to the employees
That's nice.
Wow.
Is that
for the
25?
HSA.
The fiscal year 25?
That's actually in this year's budget, so fiscal year 24. So our admin services department put out a survey to the entire city, and one of the comments we got was low monthly premiums, good provider, and HSA. Those were some of the top. So we went out and found an HSA plan, and then we just took some available funds that we could use towards it, and that would be $100 a month to an HSA. So while a percentage may drop a little bit, some of those percentages dropping from 94 to like 90 in fiscal year 25 is a couple of dollars. It doesn't equate to a lot of dollars. But in fiscal year 24 budget, we do have $100 per month for anyone who hops on that health savings account plan.
So is there any stipulations to it? I know that most of the HSAs I've dealt with are, you have to gain points and to get your $1,200 a year.
Right.
You have to take a little dietary class once a year. Is there any?
Conditions.
Yeah, so I think the big change for the employee on this is that there's a federally mandated threshold of $3,000 for the deductible, which is much higher than what we have right now. So we moved to the model and we put in $3,500 what we have right now. So there's a $3,500 deductible, which is more than the employees are used to. But if you don't hit your deductible, then actually in the budget, it's a $250 front load and then $100 a month. So it could be if you don't go to the hospital a lot, or if you're going to save money from being on the top plan and put that into the HSA, that you aren't going to have a deductible come out of your pocket because it can come out of your HSA. And on our other plans, we do have a deductible portion that the employee has to meet, and then they have to do office visit copays where if you have an HSA, your HSA could potentially cover all that. The HSA might not work for everyone, but that would kind of be the change for the employees, is that they're going to see a higher deductible, but they will also see a contribution from the city. And the nice thing about the HSA is that when you leave employment, those dollars are yours, so you can take them with you.
Right.
And you can set money aside in an HSA that's tax-free, so you get tax-free dollars in it.
Right. Right.
So if an employee wants to put money in there year over year over year, and they can retire with, you know, a good chunk of money in HSA, it can also help them in retirement for years to come.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Good looking plan.
So I was just looking to see if this aligned kind of with, you know, if you guys think that this is an appropriate model to start going after, we can potentially bring it up to BOMA as well. But it just kind of gives a more standard percentage-based model.
Will we need to vote, will you bring a resolution or a ordinance to us with this, or
So
we need to do that?
in
It's required.
in the budget, we actually list out the percentages. So when you adopt the budget,
okay.
it's going to adopt these fiscal year 24 modeling percentages. So we don't necessarily have to adopt a standalone. If I think we get good feedback on this as a plan, we could take it to BOMA for approval, but the percentages do get adopted with the budget ordinance.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you. I think that
I-
is very good incentive to keep our employees
So-
taken care of.
So, for the 25 fiscal year, does you show the standard, mid, and top, but all of those have an HSA attached to them, or is it only a specific plan?
Only the standard has the HSA.
Okay. So for the standard, okay. That
So-
makes sense. So the standard, we're gonna be paying a higher percentage, and we're gonna be putting $100 a month into an HSA form, but there's probably it's probably a lower overall rate anyways, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's a lower rate to the city. So there's an example where if an employee's on a higher plan and they're going to save a couple $100 by going to a lower plan, they now have the option to throw that money into an HSA to cover the deductible if they hit their deductible. So it just gives employees the HSA option, which we currently don't have with our city health insurance.
And could they also contribute to the HSA pre-tax?
Yes.
What's he saying?
Okay, so the city's gonna contribute and they could contribute.
Yeah, I think the max this year is $7,500 that you can contribute to an HSA.
Alderman Waters has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Guess you'll have to repeat my question because I'm too old to get up and walk over that again. But my question is, are you had any thoughts on the TML insurance? I know it's a different ballgame. But for you, I mean, I know they'll go up. I know it'll be increased. But have you done any research on that part?
Yeah, so the question is our general liability insurance on if we're going to research options. We have looked at raising our deductible to shift some of the costs around, just like you would do on your auto insurance, right? If you raise your deductible, your monthly premiums are lower. We've gone through, our finance department's gone through that analysis. We figured that if we raise our deductible and we lower our monthly premiums, we're going to be about at the same place we are right now. But I think it's something that as these costs go up, it kind of forces us to have to go out and look for alternatives. Not necessarily that we can get it cheaper, just as costs go up, I think it's our due diligence to go out and make sure that we're getting the best that we can. So we have had it on our radar to make sure that we check with other agencies. I know some cities have switched off of the general liability that we're on, and they've ended up coming back to the plan.
They left TML, but they come back. Really? Well, you talk about increasing the deductible. That's affecting us. That's affecting the budget.
Yeah, so if we,
We haven't gained anything by getting a competitive bid on our liability.
correct, yeah, that, I mean, that's something that is on our radar that we want to look at. We haven't seen any other agencies that have really seen a benefit by going elsewhere, but still doesn't mean that we shouldn't look, and we plan to.
So self-insured is out of the question.
Well, so we could also look at a tiered option where we self-insure up to a certain dollar amount, and then we go, you know, for higher coverage where, you know, anything above 100,000, maybe we're not self-insured for. So there are those types of modelings that we can go after. I'm sure that's probably part of you know, committee meetings to determine kind of BOMA's direction on if we want to self-insure. I think we're at the place financially that we can start to consider those things because we have enough available cash reserves to maybe start with a smaller, you know, maybe $100,000 or $200,000 threshold. But I think, you know, until this year, maybe the cash reserves and balances that we have probably haven't been appropriate for us to be self-insuring the city. But we're going in a positive direction with our cash balances to where that could be a consideration for the future.
Great. Any other discussion tonight? Then can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.